Welcome to my vlog of an article summary for Comm 601, Communication Fluency at Queen's University of Charlotte. I'm Denise Whitehead and I'll be providing a summary of the article From Nerds to Napoleons, Thwarting Archetypical Expectations in High School Films by Jacqueline Bach. This article appeared in JCT in 2006. The article takes the opportunity to review high school nerd movies, starting with John Hughes' The Breakfast Club, a movie which emphasizes the function of social groups on identity formation in high school, through numerous high school films depicting the ability of the nerds to overcome their geekiness and become just like everybody else. He proposes the film Napoleon Dynamite challenges this notion, and we see a shift in the portrayal of the nerd to one who accepts themselves for who they are without necessitating a transformation into the mainstream social circles. The article begins with a review of Napoleon and his story of an awkward teenager and his small social group of other students who have no acknowledgement for their outsider status. Napoleon Dynamite doesn't resist, reject, or oppose the traditional roles reserved for the nerdy teenager. Early in the film, Napoleon and his brother Kip visit the local dojo run by Rex, whose sales pitch lays out a 3-step plan to success. 1. Discipline your image. 2. Find a buddy. And 3. Possess self-respect. Subtly and mostly unconsciously, Napoleon's character displays these mantras, while the movie challenges the expectations of the nerd to go through a transformation, and instead the main characters remain in their self-designated and peer-designated roles. Bach reviews a series of films during the 20-year period that explore teen movies set in schools, featuring a nerd as a main character or supporting character. In order to evaluate how viewers are influenced by the characters of Napoleon Dynamite, comments on the Sundance blog from November 2004 through 2006 are reviewed. Through the review of the blogs related to the showing of the movie at the Sundance Film Festival, Bach realized that many viewers identified with Napoleon, even to the point of using his language. Researchers McCarthy and Demetriadis noted that television, film, radio, and the internet are now the most powerful sites for educating about difference and the production of resentment. Bach explored this concept through several sources, such as the Pew Research Center and Technology Review, to show the growing audience for blogs, especially among teenagers, and how the postings are becoming part of the teenage identity and influence on their lives. Nerds have been a prevailing character in high school films, both independent and mainstream. The Breakfast Club is an excellent example of a high school film that explores the traditional high school stereotypes, such as the jock, the prom queen, the rebel, the basket case, and the brain or nerd. Bach comments on how movies before The Breakfast Club tended to lump high school students into 2 categories, the good kids and the bad kids. The Breakfast Club broke out of this mold, commenting on the social group hierarchy, which places the nerd at the bottom. The Breakfast Club highlights the expectations that a nerd character must undergo a transformation to be socially acceptable, and that social acceptance is more valuable than idiosyncratic individuality, as explained by researcher Tim Sherry. Although during this time period between the release of The Breakfast Club and Napoleon Dynamite, nerds were usually characterized in their roles as being smart enough to realize the fallacy of this expectation. The portrayal of the nerd character didn't change much until the emergence of Napoleon and his friends Pedro and Deb. These new nerds didn't fit the standard nerd mold. Napoleon and his friends cannot be described as highly intelligent, and there is no noticeable transformation to gain social acceptance. It could be argued that Napoleon and his friends see no need for a transformation, as they don't recognize themselves as outsiders. Bach explored research from scholars like Kinney and Sherry to try and explain this shift in the different model for nerds who are uncomfortable with their image. However, that research centered around the nerds' attempts to modify their behaviors to meet their peers' expectations, which is clearly not a characteristic of Napoleon and his friends. More recent studies are pointing to a shift in how we view the nerd character and see them as being more endearing, as well as media showing a growing popularity of the nerd character, as referenced by Milner. So, why is it important to study teenage films? Bach states teenage films help illuminate the role the nerd plays in school's hierarchy, and the ties they share with their real counterparts, nearly all teenagers. Taking the sensei's 3 rules from the movie to organize the remainder of her article, she starts with Rule 1. disciplining, not making over your image. According to Brown and Theobald, American adolescents are charged with the task of achieving a sense of identity, crystallizing their self-concept, positioning themselves on a career path, and embracing a set of values and beliefs that will guide their choice of activities, that will guide their interpersonal relationships. Alyssa Quart proposes that the makeover movies such as The Breakfast Club and others teach kids to strive to reinvent themselves, which is contrary to Napoleon Dynamite, a character that can't change. Bach questions if Napoleon doesn't undergo the coming-of-age theme that Quart prefers. Is that so bad? Napoleon doesn't consider himself a nerd or recognize the boundaries which separate him from his peers. Rather, he sees others as sharing his space. Napoleon does, however, realize the importance of having a buddy, not changing one's image, to avoid the negative behavior directed at him from his peers. Rex's Rule 2, find a buddy to get your back, highlights the importance of a friend to adolescents and the complicated system of cliques in a school setting. According to Brown and Theobald, cliques tend to be the adolescent's primary source of peer companionship, support, and pressure or influence, and have dramatic impact on adolescents' experiences in schools. Movies and media leading up to Napoleon Dynamite highlight a teen's attempts at the makeover to be accepted into another social group or clique. Napoleon and his friend Pedro don't experience these attempts to be socially acceptable to another group. They accept each other and encourage one another to interact with peers in their own ways, again, changing the perception that a nerd must transform to be accepted socially. Both of these rules contribute to Rex's idea that self-respect is the means to avoiding failure. Bach notes that throughout the film, Napoleon exhibits a strong sense of self-respect. Napoleon navigates his world with confidence, regardless of how his peers react to him. The movie subtly reflects Smith's research surrounding the shifting status of social groups in high school today, noting that cheerleaders and football players don't hold the same status as they used to. One could deduce that this shift is, in part, due to the nerd's attitudes of self-respect in more and more movies and television shows. As one blogger on the Sundance blog wrote, Napoleon just is. He makes no apologies for his awkwardness. He finds his happiness in Pedro and Deb, and they have their own happy community. The role of the nerd in mainstream media has certainly changed from the highly intelligent outcast striving to gain popularity to the I accept myself for who I am and don't need to change attitude we see in Napoleon. But it's gone farther than that since the writing of this article. At the end of Napoleon Dynamite, our main character performs a dance for the student body, resulting in a standing ovation and acceptance from his peers. He did nothing different to change himself, but was accepted for who he was, as all the students found a little bit of themselves in his struggles. By bringing attention to this shift in media and studies by researchers like Kinney and Milner, students are better able to identify the things in their lives that are influencing their identities. We see the premise of Rex's 3-step program in today's efforts to combat bullying and assist students in gaining self-confidence. Before Napoleon Dynamite, the high school nerd went through the I want to be like them thought process. Napoleon shows us it's okay to be who I am. Are we now seeing a shift to nerds saying, they want to be like me? I look forward to further research to find out.